Howdy, folks. Chuck Sheely here with Making Music Magazine, and we are here for a part two-ish episode with master violinist Jeremy Cohen. And he's going to share with us in more detail a very special violin that he has acquired and is the current, as he puts it, custodian. And you've heard this violin before many times, whether you know it or not. And I'll just turn it over here to Jeremy to tell us all about it. Hi, Jeremy.
Hey, Chuck. How are you?
Very well,
So the violin I play is a French violin made by Jean-Baptiste Villaume. This violin was made in 1868. I always tell people that was 4 years after President Lincoln got shot, just to give it a little bit of historical perspective about what was going on over here in the old US. Villaume had essentially 3 shops over his career in Paris. And Villaume was actually one of the first really big violin shops, created a lot of commerce. He was a real businessman, but one of the most important things that Villaume did, aside from being a fine violin maker, was he recognized the value of the old Italian violins, the quality, the craftsmanship. And I've heard it said, and it's in a fair amount of literature, that Villaume was the person that made Stradivarius famous. I'm sure Strad would be famous even if Villaume didn't, because Stradivarius's violins are that magnificent and Guarnerius violins are that magnificent. But Villaume was the one who went into Italy and started collecting these, cataloging these, replicating them. They were such a successful shop that he had many workers making new violins using the models of these old Strads and Guarneri violins. We refer to them as Strad and Guarneri, Stradivarius and Guarnerius violins. And really helped sort of solidify the legend and create the iconic image that still lasts today of the great old Italian violins as being the apex of the heights of artistry and instrument making. Of course, for those of you who don't know, good Stradivarius violins go these days anywhere from $1 million to $20 million, and I'm sure some have sold for more. So I'm not sure about the exact stats. I'm lucky to have this violin. I got it in 1981 when the owner of the violin passed away. Now, his name was Lou Raderman. He was the concertmaster of the MGM Orchestra. He came from New York in 1939 to become the concertmaster at MGM of the contract orchestra. Remember, the big studios had full-time contract orchestras that showed up for work every day, practiced, recorded film scores, Tom and Jerry cartoons, movies. The very first movie that Lou Raderman played on this violin when he came over in 1939 was this weird film that MGM was working on, and it had some color and it had some black and white and it had a young girl in it, and they didn't know if it was going to go, but they were doing some experimentation with color and black and white in the same film. It was Wizard of Oz. Talk about an iconic movie. This violin was involved in that soundtrack. Now, earlier that year, before the contract orchestra start, MGM also did Gone with the Wind. But Lou Raderman came on, I guess, in a later part of 1939, and then remained the concertmaster of the MGM Orchestra from 1939 through 1969, when the contracts ended and every musician started becoming a freelancer. Everyone was a freelancer in Hollywood. The contract orchestras were done. The year of those years were over. A lot of people continued to work because, in the 1960s and 1970s, TV production was huge. Motion picture business was there was a lot of work people could sustain. Anyway, Lou Raderman continued on. They lived in Los Angeles for many years, and he played on recordings with everybody. I mentioned to you guys earlier some projects with Sammy Davis Jr. And in New York, before he even got out to California, he had played in a band. He went under the name of Ken Woods and was a band leader and played with Bix Beiderbecke in New York. And took the job at MGM, had a full-time job there, then started freelancing in Hollywood and played with virtually everybody: Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis, Peggy Lee, Pat Boone, Rosemary Clooney. Look at allmusic.com and look at the recording credits for Lou Raderman. It reads like something you have never experienced, like the most iconic recordings, recording after recording. I want to listen to them all and hear his magnificent, beautiful violin playing on it. But the quickest way to get to hear him is just to pull up an old Tom and Jerry cartoon and listen to the soundtrack. You'll hear his violin dominates the sound, and they use a smaller section for the cartoons, so you can really hear it. And there's a lot of solos in them. It was an awesome thing and an awesome player. This Viome violin loves microphones. It sounds as clear as a bell. One thing I really feel lucky about is this violin records so well. By the way, listen to Singin' in the Rain, listen to American in Paris, listen to Seven Brides for Seven Brothers, listen to every MGM musical between 1939 and 1969, and every violin solo in those musicals, and every kiss scene in all the dramatic movies. This instrument, amazing. And I feel a certain amount of responsibility as its guardian for the moment to do interesting things and to play things that really connect to its legacy and its history. It's important for me to know what this violin has done and continue bringing, amazing things and wonderful entertainment and great connection to people who hear it, and that they sometimes get to know that information. I will say to people, I'll be in front of an audience and say, even in China, I will say, you've heard this violin before. If you've listened to an American movie, an MGM movie, and heard a violin solo, this is not the first time you've heard this violin. As a matter of fact, this may be one of the most heard instruments by virtue of the fact that it's recorded so much material that is so iconic. So it it speaks in any genre that I can approach. The violin is it's interesting. And a maker once said to me, when it sits on the table, it says nothing. Your instrument as well, whatever instrument you play. As it sits on the table, it has no voice. And then as the understanding of the owner, the operator, the custodian of the instrument at that time can speak in a language or speak in a genre, the instrument will respond as long as the technique and ability to speak as honestly in that form. For string players, so much of the training has been in classical music, and if you were to play some of the things that I played just from goofing around at my desk, like things like this, would get me thrown out of a classical lesson. You know what I'm saying? I would be given a negative about the appropriateness of that. And I would be told, if I were in a, diehard classical model school, that I was somehow musically misbehaving. And it takes a lot of self-determination. Like, I was playing folk music with folk players, and some of these things, doing rhythmic bowings and sounding a little more scrapey, and what are the things. So I really started personally to explore what about different genres gives them their voice, gives them their authenticity. And the violin really has never resisted that. Only the psychology of the player resists that, even to the point of using the violin purely as a percussive. The tango players do it. They don't do it because it's cute. They do it because it's a rhythmic affectation appropriate to the style of tango. And by the way, the violin, it just goes there. What we need is the technique. So the violin is like a blank canvas in a way. I happen to be lucky because I have a wonderful one that allows these variations in sound to sound the way I've developed a relationship with it, so that it speaks clearly and it records oh so well. It's, I tell every engineer that to just set the EQ to flat, and the violin, you don't have to boost anything, you don't have to bump anything, you don't need to reach into this instrument to get a better string sound. As a matter of fact, I've had a lot of engineers, come up to me over the course of my career and say, "Hey, this is a really great microphone. I've just spent $6,000 for it." And I'm like, "Uh-oh, you mean you're going to put this instrument through a $6,000 mic? You mean it's only going to sound like $6,000?" Just to tease them, because their most expensive gear doesn't come close to our most expensive gear. So how are you going to take X dollars and make it? Why are you going to dumb it down to $6,000? But no, that's not the case. Good engineer, good sound. We've had so much. We've been so lucky. Quartet San Francisco, with the Grammy nominations that we've gotten for our albums, 2 or 3 of those have been for best engineered. So the sound that we're able to get using this instrument and recording up at Skywalker Sound, we're in really good hands with with some of the best recording engineers and equipment and spaces for recording. So a good violin, a good set of mics, a good room, and we've been really lucky to get some stripes for all of that stuff. And it's just as important for us to make this what we do, bring it to the tech people, and to the people who care about sound recording and microphones and recording spaces. We answer just as much to not only music fans but techies. I mean, I put all of our credits up, and including the mics, the preamps, all the gear, all the stuff that tech people want to know gets listed on the Quartet San Francisco albums, because it takes a village to do these albums. It's not just having a cool instrument or being a seasoned player.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, it certainly, yeah, it sounds good even in the old time recordings when the equipment was less capable. It still sounds perfectly sweet.
Yeah, it's amazing to hear. I can hear my violin from the other room. Like if my wife's watching a movie and I hear a couple of notes on a violin, I'll go, "That's my fiddle." I'll recognize. Yeah, it's weird.
That's got to be pretty cool. I don't think I've had that experience before. That'd be great. So there's quite a panorama of usages with this violin. Give us the brief history and the range of some of the artists. I know you told us a little bit in the last visit, and please elaborate here.
Okay, Lou Raderman was the previous owner, and so every MGM film between 1939 and 1969, Dr. Zhivago, I think, was one of the last. That movie was in the 60s, but I just pulled up the All Music website, and I'm just going to read off. I only see one part of a screen, okay? Check this out. Chick Webb, Harry James, Maurice Jarre, Judy Garland, Ella Fitzgerald, Leslie Gore, Doris Day, Frank Sinatra, Mel Torme, The Hi-Los, Anita O'Day, Doris Day, Jeanette MacDonald, Pat Boone, Rosemary Clooney, Dean Martin, Charlie Barnett, Anne Margaret, Sammy Davis, and I have to stop and breathe. That's only one small chunk of his All Music credits. This violin was in the room. I cannot forget this.
That's what you call an A-list X right there.
And that's like the smallest, that's just that one little section of the credit thing that I pulled up.
Sure.
If you think about the breadth of what we know as our culture, you know, at what's American culture, you know, that stuff is definitely a part of a deep, deep dig into at least the Hollywood version of what that culture is.
Okay. Right, and a lot of that culture actually begins at a young age for those of us out there in watching TV land, because we hear it in the cartoons and things like that. Like it even had an onomatopoeic kind of thing with the whole whisker pluck that you showed us. Yeah.
Here, I'll do one for you.
Oh. What again?
Yeah. I just watched the other day a clip of Tom and Jerry where the mouse, that's Tom, right? Is it Tom? Okay.
No, I'm bad on this. Tom Cat and Jerry the mouse.
So Jerry's stolen a little bit of milk from the fridge, and a drop of milk rolls down his whisker, and you hear this sound when the drop drops and it bounces on the counter in the kitchen. And
so cool.
Yeah, it's real. It's those things are like so much more entertaining to me, because I hold in my hand, you know, the instrument, and it's funny, but you know, it connects me to the player. It connects me as a part of a lineage of I don't want to make too much out of it in a braggy kind of way, but there's a kind of austerity, you know, that that violin that has
You're not coming
impacted
off
so.
braggy. You're coming off as really appreciative and
I want to stay
fortunate.
mindful. I want to stay mindful, and I really want to stay in that zone where music making is still connected with joy. And in a serious, on a more serious note, that music must be connected to commerce is one of the biggest interrupters of that getting to the, because why I don't understand the connection between the need for us in our society to make money, to pay rent, to buy food, to subsist, to raise a family, and art and making art are they're not. It's a bad fit, art and commerce. It's a bad fit. That money must be made. That the monetization of art is so critically important for so many is a burden we must bear. Let's put it that way.
Thanks to the Medici's.
Yeah. Next time I go back to Italy, I'm going to have a word with that family.
Yeah, yeah. Look what you've done. So, Jeremy, what do you have a favorite moment that violin existed and performed in? Is there something that is your favorite?
See, everyone's passed away that would be concerned with this. I have a few clips of this violin playing with the MGM Orchestra, some unique soundtrack. Let me see if let me see what I can pull up right now. I got a bunch of these kind of tracks of him playing the most juicy. Could you hear all that audio?
Yeah, it was sort of like almost like a elegant, haunting waltz in a way. Things moving in three lend to that haunt. It's beautiful kind of a haunt. But it's
So that's a favorite old school recording, aside from all those wonderful iconic records that he's on. This is really him alone with the MGM Orchestra in just this big, lush, gorgeous thing. That's a favorite old thing. And then one of my favorite newer things is an album that I just did with Anna Maria Mendieta, a harp player. And that is this. Let me see if I can pull that one up out of my. Bordeaux, let's see. This is an album. This is an album I did at Skywalker Ranch. It's an album for a harp player, but it's just out now, just been released, and it's a harp tango album. And I did a bunch of arranging and conducting, and George Calandrelli works on the album, Jorge Calandrelli. And we did some Piazzolla and some tangos, and there's some original stuff. And here's a clip of that. There's that chichara sound effect. Anyway, that one's got Pablo Ziegler's on that album, and Jorge Colindrelli's on it, and Jeremy Cohen. It's kind of funny.
Cool.
So this album, right now, this album that's been submitted, we'll find out if it gets a nomination in November for the Grammys. It's called Tango del Cielo. I can send you the link for it so that you can share that also. There's some really cool, I think it's one of my more current favorites because the new Quartet San Francisco album is called a QSF Journey. And that's available, you can look that up on YouTube. That's our most recent album. That's got some original compositions on it, and it's recorded at Skywalker. And, it's that violin with me playing theoretically at my best. I just, they're all my children, but I kind of am living in the sound of that violin, and that's kind of a good indicator of where my career is, and in the best form that we can present it to the most people. Nothing replaces a live performance or a real one-on-one, but the AQSF Journey CD is our most recent project, and our next project that we're about to dive into with the Quartet San Francisco with my string quartet is going to be the music dedicated to the music of Raymond Scott, whose music was so widely used in those Warner Brothers cartoons. And it was, you brought that up, Chuck, earlier in the interview, where I was as impacted, I think, as you were by sitting down on a Saturday morning and hearing grand opera and iconic classical music combined with funny effects and the music of Raymond Scott at Powerhouse. This thing, Bugs Bunny being mad, or Elmer Fudd, or the music of Powerhouse. That had equal footing with the iconic classical music. So we grew up in a really awesome time where we got the benefit. We got the benefit of the old with the benefit of the new, and the violin as the bridge. In between. It's my instrument of it's my instrument of choice, I guess. Mm-hmm. But it's the thing that binds the two together, because they are both. It's an active player as in both elements, and they're quite considered by most people to be very separate and very far apart, but they're unified because of the connection of the instrument. One last thing I want to say is, in order to light up about the education thing, in order to light up young players, we used to do education concerts for San Francisco Symphony, the early form of Quartet San Francisco. We did educational shows, and I realized the thing that really turned the light bulb on for me was that our violist at the time, we would introduce ourselves. Hi, I'm Jeremy. I play the violin. I play a couple of things. And we actually started from the bottom up. So the cellist would say, hi, it's me. I play the cello. Here's the range of the cello. Here's a high note. Here's a low note. Then our violist would stand up, and she said, hi, I'm Emily. This is my viola. And then she would play the theme from the Pink Panther, and the kids knew it. And I could see the energy on the floor bubbling. And I thought to myself, okay, why this? Why is this happening when the moment that Emily connects to those kids with something from their lifetime, it meant something to them. It meant it represents what they do on Saturday morning. They listen to the Pink Panther, they hear that theme song, they're getting ready for something good. It's a part of their life cycle. And that was the key for me that started Quartet San Francisco. What can we play as a string quartet that connects directly to the lifetimes of our audiences, whether they're 90 or whether they're 9? And so Quartet San Francisco, with the help of my violin as a voice, connects people with, you see, string quartet's a weird thing. Like, people don't really understand string quartet. They think of it as associated only to that old iconic or ultra modern weird squeak fart music, you know, contemporary. But no, there's a place for acoustic string instruments in the life of our audiences today. And if we can navigate and play music of Stevie Wonder, of Leonard Bernstein, of all these things that our parents knew, that we know as kids, that our kids know, stuff from Disney soundtracks, stuff from Stevie Wonder, like I said, and I grew up listening to Otis Redding, and how can I make a cool arrangement of Doc sitting on the dock of the bay, and how can I bring that so that people, when they hear a string quartet, hear us as a dynamic, vibrant thing that has meaning to their lives. And then we're not so weird. Then a string quartet's not weird. And these kids grow up and they go, oh, theme from Pink Panther, I heard a string quartet playing that. I wonder what they sound like playing Mozart. And then you get the backwards connection. Yeah. And the violin has made its stand, has taken its stand in as a contemporary voice, with me as its owner operator.
Well, it currently has, indeed. Yeah. So, well, thank you so much, Jeremy. I mean, the pleasure's all ours to have you on board today to visit with us and, share your thoughts on the violin, and to share your violin and the deep well of insight that you have regarding all this. Really appreciate you stopping by. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Again, you can visit Jeremy at, please state your
my teaching app is stringmasters.com. My publishing, my sheet music is violinjazz.com. My string quartet, Quartet San Francisco, my Grammy-nominated string quartet, is quartetsanfrancisco.com. And my jazz band is jeremycohen.com. That's 4 websites, folks.
There it is. You can find them anywhere, a variety of ways, folks. Once again, thank you for watching. I'm Chuck Sheely. And if you had a good time, make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and make sure you hit all of our social media channels. We're everywhere all the time. Keep practicing, stay happy, and have a great day.